What would happen if a woman was humiliated right inside the very bank where she is the CEO? That Tuesday morning, Grand Crest Bank's branch number 12 welcomed its usual stream of customers. Outside, a soft sunlight filtered through the tall glass windows, casting a cold, clinical glow distinctive of the central financial district. In the quiet line of people waiting for service, no one paid attention to the woman in a simple navy blue coat, wearing flat shoes and carrying a matte black leather handbag. Her neatly tied curly hair and makeup-free face carried a calm, composed strength. That woman was Elena Brooks, one of the most powerful women of color in the financial world, currently serving as the chief executive officer of the entire Grand Crest banking system. But no one here knew that. Today, Elena wasn't arriving as a CEO, but as a regular client, a risky experiment she had set for the very system she led. Over the past few weeks, vague reports had reached her regarding unfair service and possible discrimination against minority clients at this branch. And instead of ordering an internal investigation, she chose to appear in person, unannounced, with no entourage, no business card. Just a woman named Eleanor, requesting to withdraw a large sum from her own account. The amount was $175,000, not because she needed the cash, but because she wanted to see how the staff would react when faced with a black woman, dressed modestly, conducting an unusual transaction. From the moment she stepped in, she noticed the wary glances from the reception desk. A young female employee placed her hand on the phone while staring at Elena and whispered something to her colleague beside her. Elena remained calm, queuing like everyone else, watching each gesture, each greeting, each subtle tone. Ahead of her, a white man in a suit was immediately invited to the VIP counter, where a hot cup of coffee awaited him. Meanwhile, an elderly Asian couple was told to sit down and take a number. Eleanor pressed her lips slightly, her eyes sharpening. The injustice needed no words. When it was her turn, she stepped forward, handed over the withdrawal slip and her identification. The teller, named Monica, received them with a stiff smile, glanced quickly at the amount, then looked up, her expression shifting noticeably. "I'm sorry, how much would you like to withdraw?" Monica asked, her tone bordering on accusatory. $175,000, Elena replied, her voice low but clear. She stood tall, her gaze unwavering. The entire lobby seemed to pause for a beat. An invisible space had just opened between a woman who simply wanted to withdraw her own money and a system about to reveal its true nature. And no one knew that this silence was the very beginning of an unprecedented reckoning at Grand Crest. Elena stood at the counter, unhurried and composed, yet she could clearly feel the shift in the atmosphere around her. Monica, the bank teller, glanced at the withdrawal slip once more, then slowly looked Elena up and down, her gaze deliberate and measuring, pausing just a moment longer on the neatly styled curls and deep brown skin. The polite smile from earlier had vanished entirely. "That's a large amount," Monica said, her voice low but loud enough for the man standing behind Elena to furrow his brow with curiosity. Elena nodded gently. "I understand, but my account has sufficient balance, and I've brought all the necessary identification." Monica didn't respond right away. Instead, she picked up the internal phone, dialed a series of numbers, then leaned in to whisper. Elena caught a few words: double check and suspicious customer. She remained silent, her eyes drifting to the left where an Asian man was trying to explain something to another staff member, only to receive a cold shake of the head in return. Just a few steps away, A white couple who had just walked in were already being directed to the priority lounge, complete with leather chairs, chilled water, and even a vase of fresh flowers. Within the same space, the disparity in treatment was so stark it bordered on surreal. Elena exhaled quietly, her lips tightening slightly. She wasn't surprised, but witnessing that bias firsthand, inside the very institution she had spent over a decade building, still pierced her. Monica returned, speaking slowly as if soothing a child. "We're going to need a few additional documents for verification, and we might have to wait for approval from upper management." Elena replied, "I can wait." Her voice was calm, but her gaze was cold as steel. She didn't need to apply pressure. She only needed the system itself to reveal its true nature. As Monica walked away, Elena scanned the row of customers, now beginning to murmur. An elderly woman whispered, "Something's going on again." A young man lifted his phone, beginning to record. Elena said nothing. She knew that when you pull back the curtain, the first thing exposed is always discomfort. But what comes next is the truth, raw and undeniable. And this time, she wouldn't just watch. She would make them face it. When Monica returned to the counter, she was not alone. Accompanying her was a man in a crisp white shirt and a deep red tie. His name badge reading Riley West, shift manager. Riley was tall, broad-shouldered, with a cold stare and the composed confidence of someone used to being in charge. He didn't greet Elena, didn't ask for any information, and instead positioned himself directly in front of the counter, arms crossed, looking at her as if she were a potential threat. "Ma'am," Riley said, his voice attempting to remain polite, but edged with caution. "We need to verify a few details before processing your withdrawal request. This transaction exceeds the usual threshold." Elena offered a faint smile. "I understand. I've provided all necessary documentation, and my account has never been flagged." Riley tilted his head slightly, raising an eyebrow in a deliberately pointed manner. "Even so, cases like yours often require additional scrutiny." He emphasized those last two words with a subtle but sharp insinuation. Monica kept her head lowered, avoiding Elena's eyes. Around them, a few customers began to pay closer attention, one even raising a phone to begin recording. Elena could feel the heavy stares from those lined up behind her. Curiosity, suspicion, and more than a few faces that seemed all too ready to believe Riley's implication. But she remained composed. "And what exactly do you mean by cases like mine?" she asked, her voice calm but edged with steel. Riley didn't respond directly, only shrugged. "I'm just following safety procedures." Elena nodded. "Then show me where those procedures are written and how they apply to the customers behind me." Her voice wasn't loud, but it was enough to freeze the air in the room. Riley glanced at Monica, then mumbled in a low tone, almost evasively. "We just want to make sure there aren't any unusual transactions from unfamiliar individuals." This time, Monica, still with her head down, murmured almost involuntarily, "We've had fraud cases before. From someone similar." Elena closed her eyes for a second, then opened them, her gaze now burning bright. She didn't need to defend herself. She only needed to wait, because the trap they were setting was about to snap shut. And she, the woman they deemed inappropriate, would make sure this branch never forgot what happened today. The tension in the bank lobby stretched taut like a wire about to snap, as Riley West, the shift manager, leaned toward Monica and whispered something before turning back to Elena with a watchful stare. "You're really requesting to withdraw $175,000 in cash right now?" he said, loud enough for several customers nearby to turn and stare. Elena remained composed, replying succinctly, "That's correct." Riley frowned, then began typing into the computer at an unusually slow pace, clearly dragging out the process. The entire lobby seemed to hold its breath. An elderly man behind her whispered to his companion, "She's definitely up to something. Who pulls that kind of cash?" Elena heard it all, but didn't flinch. Another woman started recording with her phone, subtly raising it to chest level. Murmurs spread through the room, and eyes locked onto Elena as if she were under investigation. Just then, Damon Cole, the young teller with barely 6 months on the job and a reputation for cockiness, walked over, folded his arms on the counter, and raised his voice deliberately. "I'm guessing it's settlement money, or maybe a lottery win, right? Because regular folks don't have that kind of cash." He gave a mocking smirk, his tone laced with sarcasm. Elena turned to him, staring directly into his eyes with such icy calm that Damon faltered for a split second. But instead of backing down, he kept going. "I've read about those payouts before. Someone like you probably got lucky somewhere." The phrase, "someone like you," landed in Elena's ears like a sharp, quiet blade. Subtle, but cutting. Still, she remained unmoved, her eyes narrowing for just a fraction of a second. She knew exactly what they were trying to do: provoke her, make her lose composure, so they'd have a reason to deny her service. But she wasn't the type to be undone by petty insults. Riley continued inputting information, occasionally stealing glances at Elena, as if waiting for her to misstep. Monica stood behind the counter in silence, but her averted gaze spoke volumes. Slowly, Eleanor opened her wallet, took out her bank card, and placed it on the counter. "This is my official Grand Crest card. If there are still doubts, I'd like you to clearly state your reasons and cite the relevant bank policy." Her words cut through the air with clarity and finality, freezing Riley mid-keystroke. He turned to Monica, avoiding Elena's eyes, and mumbled, "We're just following standard procedures, especially with customers who don't usually make large transactions." Elena offered a faint, cold smile. "Then let me help you remember this transaction a little more clearly, because it will be the last one some of you process at this branch." The moment Eleanor finished her loaded remark, Riley instinctively stepped back. Before he could react, she reached into her handbag, pulled out her phone, and dialed a number. Her movements were so swift and deliberate that several people nearby took notice. She raised the phone to her ear, her voice calm and cold. "Thomas Rayner, it's me, Elena. I'm currently at Branch 12 and have just been denied a withdrawal from my personal account. It seems I no longer meet the service standards here. I need you here within 15 minutes. On the other end, there was no need for clarification. A single clipped reply came through. "I'll be there immediately." She ended the call, put her phone away, stepped back to the counter, and stood still, her gaze locked on Riley, Monica, and Damon, who now appeared utterly drained of color. Monica turned to Damon, eyes wide in panic. Riley broke into a cold sweat. The name Thomas Rayner, Senior Executive Director of Grand Crest, was not someone you called like a help desk. The fact that Elena spoke to him by first name without any introduction was enough to shift the entire balance of power in the room. But Elena offered no explanation. She stood tall, both hands resting lightly on the counter, her eyes as still and cold as a winter lake at midnight. Around them, customers began to sense something was terribly off. A few whispered, "Who is she? She must be someone really important." Look how scared they are. Riley tried to collect himself, adjusted his collar, and stammered, "I'm sorry. Who did you just call?" Elena didn't answer. Her eyes simply moved past him, as if he no longer deserved the dignity of a reply. 12 minutes later, the bank doors flew open like a storm had struck. Thomas Rayner stepped inside, his face stern, his eyes sweeping across the lobby without pausing for a second. Those who recognized him stood up straight at once. The chatter stopped. He walked directly toward Elena, giving her a respectful nod, then turned sharply to Riley and spoke, every word distinct, not loud, but ringing with authority. "Do you have any idea who you just mistreated?" Riley trembled, unable to form a word. Thomas scanned the faces of the entire staff, then gestured toward Elena, his voice unwavering. "This is Mrs. Elena Brooks, the current CEO of the entire Grand Crest banking system that you all work for." The lobby froze in place. Eyes widened in shock. Faces drained of color. Elena remained still, silent, because the truth now illuminated the room more powerfully than any speech ever could. The air in the bank lobby grew thick and heavy the moment Elena's identity was confirmed. Monica stood frozen, lips pressed tightly together, eyes welling with tears. Damon lowered his head, all traces of arrogance gone. Riley swallowed hard, sweat beading across his forehead as he struggled to keep his voice steady. "Mr. Rayner, we were just following standard procedures to ensure security." Thomas didn't let him finish. He raised a hand, signaling him to stop. "There is no procedure that gives you the right to insult, humiliate, or question a client of this bank simply because of their skin color or appearance. And even if she weren't the CEO, she's still a customer, still entitled to the same respect as anyone else." His words landed like a cold slap on each of them, the very same people who had sneered at Eleanor only minutes earlier. She stood tall, not raising her voice, but speaking with quiet clarity. "I don't need an apology. What I need is for this system to understand one thing. If you could do this to me today, what have you done to the thousands of voiceless customers out there?" A painful silence spread across the room. Thomas turned to security. "I want all staff from this shift held for internal investigation. Effective immediately, suspend Riley West, Damon Cole, and Monica James from duty, pending disciplinary review." Monica let out a soft sob. Damon looked like he wished he could vanish, and Riley clenched his fists, but dared not say a word. Elena's gaze never left them. As Thomas signaled it was time to go, she spoke one final sentence, calm but heavy with meaning. "This is your last chance to relearn the most basic principle of all: respect." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving behind 3 people who had just lost not only their jobs, but their dignity, because the words they thought no one would remember had now echoed loud and clear in front of everyone watching. The following morning, the central auditorium of Grand Crest was filled to capacity. Never before had an internal meeting felt so solemn and charged with tension. Elena stepped onto the podium with a calm demeanor, her gaze steady and commanding as it swept across the room, taking in everyone from regional directors to newly hired associates. She brought no printed speeches, no lengthy statements. All she needed was the truth. "Yesterday, I was discriminated against inside the very bank I lead. Not because of my account balance, not because of procedural issues, but because of the color of my skin and the simplicity of my appearance." Her opening line dropped into the room like a pin into silence. She continued, I'm not telling this story to shame anyone. I'm telling it so we can finally face a disease that has been growing unchecked, unconscious bias, mistaken assumptions, and the silent complicity that allows them to thrive. Her eyes settled on the front row, where senior managers now sat upright and alert. Starting today, Grand Crest will undergo a complete transformation of its service culture. A new code of conduct will be implemented. Any violation of respect and fairness, regardless of rank, will be dealt with transparently and publicly. She paused, then her voice softened, though it carried even more authority. Every employee will take part in anti-bias and anti-discrimination training, not to check a box or decorate a report, but so that every customer, every person who walks through our doors, knows they are valued. Her words were not just a reckoning. They were a call to action for genuine change. Standing beside her, Thomas Rayner added, "No individual is bigger than the culture of the organization, and no organization can survive if it loses the trust of the people it serves." The room remained quiet, but the looks on faces began to shift, from hesitation to resolve. That day, Grand Crest didn't just hold a meeting. They reignited the very conscience of their institution. The incident at Branch 12 did not end with the dismissal of 3 employees. It was merely the beginning of a true reckoning within Grand Crest, and more broadly across the entire banking industry. The name Elena Brooks, the woman once doubted, belittled, and insulted inside the very organization she led, is now mentioned across the media as a symbol of composure, resilience, and unwavering integrity in the face of injustice. Videos capturing the entire ordeal, from the moment she was questioned to the revelation of her identity and the powerful public terminations, quickly went viral on every social media platform. Television, newspapers, and podcasts all reported on the story, not just to recount the incident, but to dive deeper into the broader issue of racial discrimination in today's corporate workplaces. Riley West, a once seasoned manager, is now associated with words like outdated, prejudiced, and unfit to lead. Damon Cole, the young teller who smirked in the CEO's face, has become the most heavily criticized figure on Twitter, where the clip of him mocking someone like you hit millions of views within 24 hours. Monica James, the quietest of them all, yet perhaps the most complicit, now faces backlash from former clients and co-workers alike. They didn't just lose their jobs, they are now facing civil rights lawsuits for serious acts of discrimination, and may even lose their eligibility to work in the financial sector altogether. Meanwhile, Eleanor did not stop at a reform speech or a staff meeting. She appeared at business summits, prestigious universities, and open forums on equity, not as a storyteller, but as a true leader who had walked straight out of reality. On the grand stage of a national forum on anti-discrimination, Eleanor spoke a single sentence that left the entire hall in absolute silence. What's truly frightening is not when the system is wrong, but when the people who know what's right choose to stay silent. I cannot let that happen under my leadership. That sentence became a rallying cry, printed on banners and shared thousands of times with the hashtag #SpeakWithIntegrity. And more than a media wave, it awakened in many the belief that justice doesn't always begin with a sweeping campaign. Sometimes it begins with one person who dares to stand tall, hold on to their dignity, and refuse to walk away until the truth is acknowledged. Grand Crest entered a new chapter, a model of what it means to redefine respect for customers. And the person who laid the foundation for that transformation was still just one woman, standing calmly in the lobby that day, asking a very simple question: why am I not allowed to withdraw money from my own account? In the world of finance, where numbers are often valued more than people, Elena Brooks' actions remind us that true core values do not lie in power or titles, but in how we treat each individual, whether they walk in wearing a suit or a simple coat. A system is only truly strong when it dares to confront its own mistakes and change from within. If today's story makes you believe that fairness must begin with the smallest of things, then like this video, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other inspiring stories, and leave a comment with the phrase, "Choose justice," because sometimes one person who dares to stand firm is enough to change an entire system.